Hi, everyone. I'm Gail. Something that I've always wished for is just to be like all of my other classmates. But there is something special about me that makes me stand out. I attend school in the presence of bodyguards who follow me everywhere. So let me tell you more about my life. My parents are the owners of a very large building company, which is a real estate developer in 10 countries of the world. Their fortune amounts to millions of dollars, and therefore they have many ill wishers. I started the first grade in an expensive private school. My parents decided that it would be easier for me to socialize among the children from rich and powerful families. But in a month after the start of my studies, I was kidnapped. I'm terrified to remember everything that I had to go through then, and I really thank fate for the fact that it's all over now. After this incident, for some time I hadn't left the house at all. Only some of my friends who lived in the neighborhood and were allowed to visit me could save me from isolation. So I spent the period of time from first to fourth grade homeschooling. Then the gilded cage became too small for me, and I asked my parents with tears in my eyes to send me to an ordinary school with ordinary students near our house. My parents thought for a while, and then they agreed, but on one condition, namely that I would go to school accompanied by bodyguards. At the time, I didn't think anything of it, but I had no idea what I would have to face because of it. So my fifth grade year started in the company of two bodyguards who were forbidden to take even one step away from me. These were two huge, muscled, tough guys with stony faces. Can you imagine the reaction of my classmates to such a sight? Yes, you are right. They began to shrink from me like the plague and look at me with condemning glances. And that wasn't just my only problem. On the first day, I realized that I could not go to the bathroom at school because the security was forbidden to leave me, but they couldn't enter the ladies' room as well. I called my mother in tears and told her about my problem. She replied that she and Dad hadn't thought of that either, so they needed some more time to find a female bodyguard, and I had to stay at home for another month while they were searching for the right person. When I returned to school, I realized that I was far too behind in the curriculum, so I began to feel myself not only different, but also the most stupid pupil in the class. Again, it took a while to catch up to my classmates and end the mockery of my level of knowledge. But within half a year, I realized that my main problem was that I was an outsider in this class, in the company of my peers. Everyone else had friends, companions, somebody to share secrets with, and all my communication was limited to the woman with muscles throughout her body and the man who could break bricks with his head. What kind of friends could I have if my bodyguards didn't leave my side? Even the most sociable and friendly girls in the class stayed away from me and were afraid to come up to me. I really regretted that I had started all of this. It was better to continue my studies at home. Then I would not have to feel like the odd one out. But there was no turning back, which meant that I would have to continue my studies at school. Once, studying in the ninth grade, I finally decided to become an ordinary girl like everyone else, at least for a few hours. I heard that my classmates were going to visit a museum after school and then go to the cafe and eat delicious burgers there. I was deprived of such joys because the food had always been delivered directly to our house, or my parents and I could have dinner at restaurants. And as for museums, I had never been to any of them. So I decided that I would escape from the bodyguards and join my classmates. I wanted to spend all evening with them and then return home. Could I afford it for myself at least once? During lunch, I spilled a bowl of soup on the female bodyguard as if it was an accident. And while she was in the bathroom, I told the second bodyguard that I saw a man outside the dining room that was peering in and looking at me. When the second bodyguard went to see who was there, I opened the window, jumped out of it, and ran to the school gates as quickly as I could. A few minutes later, I was outside the school grounds. Finally, I got my freedom. But I forgot to take into account the fact that, unlike my classmates, I had no experience moving around the city by myself. I did not know where the museum was located and how to get there. So I decided to go there by taxi. Probably the driver would know the address, and all I had to do was say the name of the museum. I was lucky because a taxi just happened to drive up to the bus stop. The passengers got out of it, and I immediately got in their place. The museum turned out to be very far from the school, and we drove to it for almost an hour. During this time, calls from the bodyguards and then from my parents started to come to my phone. They were so annoying. Actually, I thought that I didn't need the phone at all because no one else called me except for them. So I opened the window and threw the phone away. When we arrived at the museum, I realized to my horror that I had absolutely no money with me. The taxi driver demanded that I pay for the trip, and I was numb with fear. I had never been in such an awkward situation before and did not know what to do. I didn't even have a phone to ask my parents to help me. Then the taxi driver himself pointed at my watch and told me to give it to him as payment for the trip. Well, the problem was solved. However, it was not the last of my problems. I still did not have money, and therefore I could not pay for the entry into the museum. Also, I did not even know whether my classmates were there or not. After standing at the entrance for several minutes, I decided to just walk around the city and enjoy my freedom. I was hoping to ask for a phone from one of the passers-by after a couple of hours and call my parents so they could come get me. I walked along the beautiful avenues and crowded streets. A street seller treated me with cotton candy, and this added bright colors to my day. Wandering around the city without my parents and without bodyguards was so cool. I wanted to breathe in deep in order to remember the smell of freedom. After a while, I was tired, so I sat on a bench near a lonely girl who was reading a book and asked her to borrow a phone. Then I called my parents and asked them to pick me up. My bench neighbor sent them my location and then left, and I stayed to wait for them. Honestly, I did not think that I had done anything terrible, and I was sure that my parents would not scold me. I didn't do anything bad. I just decided to give myself a holiday, getting a break from it all. I was wrong. My parents showed up with the police within 10 minutes. They were so angry and even started yelling at me, although they had never yelled at me before. It turned out that my watch had a GPS sensor, so that my parents always knew my whereabouts. After it became clear that I had escaped, they began to chase the taxi driver and later detained him with my watch. The poor taxi driver tried to justify himself and explain the situation, but of course, no one believed him. My parents and the police were sure that he did something terrible to me, and that's why he had my personal watch. I was very sorry for the innocent man. I did not even think that I could cause him such an inconvenience. But after all, my parents had not been honest with me either. I had already been under continuous watch, and they decided to also install a spy device, keeping it secret from me. They could at least have warned me about it. However, that was not all. Due to the fact that my bodyguards had lost track of me, my dad fired them on the spot. But after all, I deceived them myself. It turned out that they were punished because they trusted me. I was so sorry for all of the people which suffered because of what I had done. That evening, my parents and I had a serious talk. In my mind, this talk was a long time coming. I explained my position to them and told them that it was very difficult for me to be a hostage in their cage. I told them that I had grown up and I wanted at least a little freedom. In turn, my parents told me that they had very unfair competitors who could harm me, so I still remained under constant threat. However, together we were able to reach a common solution. We agreed that once a week my parents would rent a cafe, a bowling club, or a movie theater for the whole class. Outside, the building would be surrounded by guards, and I would be able to spend time with my peers there. Fortunately, my classmates were very pleased with this proposal, which meant that I would finally make friends. On normal school days, I would continue going to school with bodyguards and lead a fairly closed lifestyle. My parents say that this will not always be the case. I really hope for that. By the way, the taxi driver gave the watch back to me, and my dad paid him the cost of my trip in triple. My bodyguards were hired back to work. I was very glad of this because I had gotten used to them. And how would you react to a classmate who goes to school with bodyguards? Share your answers in the comments. Also, don't forget to click the thumbs up button under this video, and be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so.